Hi, my name's Claire, and I'm going to be helping you with lots of different aspects of the 11 plus. The next four sessions are going to be about the maths paper in particular. Okay, we're going to look at specific questions, and we're going to look at different ways of managing those questions, helping you work out what to do in different scenarios. Today's session, however, is going to be just basically focusing upon the actual kinds of questions that you will have, how they make them tricky, what to look out for, how to answer them properly on the paper, and that sort of thing. So this is what we're going to be doing. Test type and answer sheet we're going to look at in a second. Tricky question types, organising your time and being able to move on, which is really crucial, using elimination. So they are the four elements of what we are going to do today. I'm going to base my sessions around a free paper that is free for everybody online by GL Assessment. I use this because it's a really good benchmark, and it's a really good idea to have a paper that you can use. It starts off really easy, okay, but it does get progressively harder, which generally is what happens with 11 plus tests as well. It's also a lot longer than the 11 plus. It is 50 questions for this test. We're going to base these sessions around this particular test because I can use this, and I'm also hoping that you will work alongside this. I will tell you where to go up to each time, and then we'll look at specific questions before and after you've done your bit. Upon this website as well, which I will now show you where to find this, there are other tests as well, maths ones. So that means that you can, hopefully, when you've done the maths one with me, you'll find that in this maths section here that I'm showing you here, there's other tests as well for you to have a go at. Okay, so let's get on with what we're doing. So this is the website you will go to find this. It's just GL Assessment, it's free materials, and they are all multiple choice. Now, alongside the actual maths questions, which I'll show you in a second, there is also obviously an answer sheet. Okay, I'm actually going to show you the answer sheet first of all, just because I think that will be one of the tricky elements to get around and to get used to. Okay, because it's very different to any sort of types of tests that you will have done at school. So this is the an example of, this is the one we will use for the GL assessment, and I'd really like you to use this while we are working on this, just because it will get used to the idea of not answering on the paper, but actually answering on this. Now, this paper is set out very precisely because it's going to be used to go through a computer. So we have to be really careful with what we write on here. Basically, we should only be writing answers. Okay, we do not write anything else. We literally are going to just put a line through each of the answers that we choose. Okay, if you put a line through two answers, it will automatically be said as wrong. If you draw all over it in any way, they will be wrong, it will be void. So you have to be really careful with this. So why don't we have a go at looking at one of our questions and seeing if we can have a go at answering it on the first page. And you're welcome to do this alongside me. It probably will be helpful to do. So I'm going to bring up the paper, which hopefully you have as well. So we're going to look at the first Mathematics 1 test booklet, just so that you know which one you're looking for. And it should look like this. It's got a little bit of information at the beginning, okay, which sort of tells you some information about what it is, okay. And you're going to go through down to the first page here, okay. So obviously we've got our first question there, okay, which hopefully you can see. I'm going to just do this as a particular to demonstrate what kind of question we have. Well, also, it's a very easy one, but also how to answer this. So what is this number in figures? 5,109. Okay, so hopefully I should be able to work out which one of those it is. And I'm obviously going to go for 5,109, which is going to be E. Okay, so I'm going to answer E in that. So I've decided now on this paper here, I can do whatever I want to. You know, I might want to make sure that I underline certain bits. I might want to make sure that I know exactly what I'm looking at. This bit of the paper doesn't matter what I write on here at all. The important bit is when you actually go to the answer paper, that is where you actually put in the proper answer that you're going to do. And that's sometimes quite difficult for people to sort of get their heads around, to understand that they've got to be really careful what they do. So what I usually suggest is that you have your booklet open, and I would suggest you do this at home now as well, and your answer sheet next to it, and then you're looking at your booklet, and then you're answering on here. So I've looked at my booklet here, and I'm now going to answer it. Okay, so I know it's 5,109. So I'm going to find that on there, and I'm going to put a line through it, okay? Now, I've got to not do this. All right, that's not going to help anything. Need to just a really clear line all the way through, okay, through the middle. Don't do it too faintly with your pencil because it won't show up and it could come through as you've answered nothing. Equally, don't try and scribble all over it, okay, because that won't work either. If you make a mistake, that's fine, but you need to make sure you rub it out, because if you have two answers, as I said before, it will automatically be marked as incorrect, even if you've kind of done one fainter than the other or not rubbed it out much. Rub out properly, okay, with this. Don't cross out, because it won't register that. It's a computer, it's not going to register it's a cross. Okay, so you're literally going to fill it in. And then we do that for every single question. Okay, we answer either A, B, C, D, or E, or as in the case here, for a lot of these ones, it's actually got the answers in there, and then you choose the one. Be careful with them, obviously, because particularly if you look at question 1, they all look very similar, those numbers. Be very easy to make an error with those. Okay, so let's carry on. As I said, there's 50 questions in this test. We're not going to do 50 questions in the actual 11 plus. The 11 plus usually is between 25 and 30 questions, and usually between 25 and 30 minutes, depending on which board you're doing it with. So we can see timing is quite tight. Timing is absolutely crucial, really, for the 11 plus. And we don't want to mess up that timing by making errors with bits that you don't need to make an error with. So I'm now going to go through some of the questions in this. And I'm not going to go through every question in the test, because that's a bit pointless, because you're going to have to go a lot of it on your own. But also because really I'm going to just pick up on the kinds of errors that people make. So I'm going to start by showing you here some different parts of the test. I'm going to start by looking at question 9 here. Question 9 should be a relatively easy question, but people don't read these properly sometimes, and they get confused with what they're doing. It says, write the correct number in the box. 123 divided by something gives me 123. Now, lots of children that I've worked with will, for some reason, and I suppose it kind of makes sense, put a 0, okay, or mark in B on their paper, thinking that, well, if I've got 123 and I don't do anything to it, I'm going to have 123. But actually be really careful, because yes, if it was a subtract or if it was an add, then we would have 0 in here, but it's dividing, okay? So be careful exactly what they're asking you for, and don't, sometimes the simplest questions are the ones that people get stuck on because they're almost too simple in a way. Okay, so obviously with that one, well, you can work out what that one is, can't you? Okay, question 11. I'm going to just do this one because this is a really interesting example of how it's really important to read the bold bits. Now, in the 11 plus paper, they only ever put words in bold for a reason, okay? It's for you to take charge of, to see that bit. So what I would suggest you do is whenever you come across a word that's bold, literally put a circle around it or something. Know you've got to focus on that. Okay, so for this one, the jug holds 1 litre of water, which obviously is this one here. The jar is filled from the jug, filled from the jug. Okay, so it's filled from that jug. And then it's how much will be left in the jug. Be careful with this as well. This often trips people up. How much will be left in the jug, not how much was there in the jug, not how much there is now in the jar, how much is left in the jug. And this is a bit like those kind of questions where you're asked, how much money will they have left? How much pizza will be left over? They often trip people up because they don't read that bit that says that. Okay. In the same kind of vein, making sure you read every question properly is the main thing as well. So if we look at question 12, this chart shows how Kai spent his spare time last week. How many hours did he spend out of doors? Now, out of doors is the important bit here. And if we're not sure what the out of doors ones would be, it even tells you. So there's no reason why we can't work out what they are. But just be careful that you have read that whole thing. It's only the football, the fishing, and the cycling. So we don't need to take any account of watching TV or reading. People get this wrong because they haven't read that bit properly. Okay, I'm going to show you another one as well, a little bit further on, where people make errors with not reading them properly. So if we go down to 23, which is a bit further on now. Okay, so when we look at 23, this is a really, really common one for people to get wrong. The graph shows the weight of a baby in the first 8 weeks of her life. Now, it says, how old, and this is a really important bit, how old was the baby at the end of the week in which she gained the most weight? Lots of children that I've worked with before have only looked at this here. How old was the baby at the end of the week in which she gained the most weight? They haven't looked at this bit, in which she gained most weight. What they've done is look at how old she was. Okay, so, or they've looked at the weight here. All right, so you've got to be really careful with this and really think about what it's asking you. How old was the baby at the end? And if you need to, I would literally just underline those really important bits at the end of the week in which she gained most weight. Now, this isn't just about being able to read the axes, the X and the Y axes. This is about being able to see and understand that a steep line on a chart like this, the graph, is going to show a steep incline in whatever it is, okay? Or decline if it's going down. So we've got to look at where it is the most weight, okay? Which she gained the most weight. Now I can see here that that is my steepest bit, okay? So therefore, how old was the baby at the end of the week in which she gained the most weight? At the end of the week is also important. Because when we look at the answers, even if we've established that it is that bit, look at my possibilities of answers here. I've got 3 weeks and 4 weeks. So I need to be really careful that I'm looking at what it's asking me to do, which is obviously the end of the week. So it's got to be 4 weeks. People get stuck on that one a lot. I've given you that answer just because I want you to be really mindful of those kind of questions, okay? And really think about what it's asking you each time. Okay, right. That's kind of looking at the kind of trick questions that you can have sometimes, okay? So the next thing I wanted to look at today was you're organizing your time. And one of the big things that I've seen over the years with children attempting the 11 plus is that they don't know how to organize their time properly in a very, very short space of time. The 11 plus does not allow you to have lots of time to think through a question. You've got a minute per question. Now, some questions, obviously, when you look at them, are going to be really quick. If you think about that first question that we looked at, that's not going to take you a minute to do. If you look at the first page even of your test here, they're not going to be minute questions, okay? So you're going to save up some time for the end questions as they get progressively harder, okay? But what tends to happen is is that if somebody gets stuck with a particular question, they can often get really focused on, I've got to answer this question, I've got to answer this question. So what I would like you to do, excuse me, is to really think about how you're going to move on from a question. This is done through practice. Being able to go, right, okay, I've had my best go at this. I'm going to move on from it. It's a really important skill to be able to learn, okay, not to just stick, because every single question on an 11 plus test like this is worth the same amount. So if we look back at our answer sheet here, and I will show you it again now, every single question on here is worth the same. So if I'm getting stuck on one particular question, so I've got to 22, I'll show you the question in a second. I've got to question 22. It's a percentage question. I can't remember how to do percentages. If I spend all my time on that, even if I spend 3 or 4 minutes on that, that's taking me away from doing any of this. Okay, it may be that I can get to some of it, but I'm unlikely to finish it because I've spent too long on one question, and yet the mark available for that question is only 1, just the same as these are all 1. So it's really important to get into that mindset of not rushing through it, but equally knowing that if you don't understand something, you need to move it on. Okay, you need to decide, well, actually, I can't remember how to do that. So if I can't remember how to do it, I am going to have an educated guess. Now, the reason I'm saying this is because what I don't want you to do is leave it blank. And often at school, you're taught in tests, leave it blank, come back to it. You are unlikely, much less likely anyway, to have time to do that. And because these are all multiple choice questions, what is the point in leaving it blank for good? Even if you have a complete guess, you're still going to have a 1 in 5 chance of getting it right. So there's absolutely no point in the 11 plus to leaving anything blank. So this is what I want you to do, how I want you to approach a question if you're not sure. I've got to question 22. What percentage of £5 is 50 pence? Okay. I can't really remember percentages, and I certainly don't know how to do this one because actually it's kind of asking me for the percentage and not asking me to work out a percentage. So that's sometimes a bit tricky to do. So I'm going to look at it and I'm going to think, right, okay, well, what percentage of £5 is 50 pence? I don't think it's going to be 50% because I know that's half. Okay, so straight away I can get it down to 4. I'm going to have a bit of a guess, okay, because I've had a think about it. I still actually can't remember what to do for a percentage. So really, that's not going to necessarily suddenly come to me. So what I'm going to do is try and move on from it. So I'm going to have a guess. I'm going to go for 5%, okay? So then I go to my paper. And when I go to my paper, I'm going to write in my 5% on my paper. It doesn't matter whether I know for definite it's right or not. I'm going to put it in, okay? I'm going to put it into the actual writing it into my answer. But on my answer, on my question sheet, what I'm going to do is I'm going to acknowledge that I have guessed, an educated guess, but I have guessed at this question. And I'm going to put a ring around it, or I'm going to put a star next to it, whichever. All that tells me is that if I have extra time at the end, this is one I want to come back to, which is actually a really good thing to be able to do, because that annoying thing when teachers always say, go back and check, go back and check. This is one you need to check. By that point, you might have remembered what percentages are, or you might have think, oh, well, actually, shall I guess 20% or shall I have another think about it? If you don't have time to come back, which is also very possible, you've at least had a go, because in your answer sheet, remember, you have drawn in that line for one of those options. What you haven't done is left it blank. If you leave it blank, get to the end and have no time, it's still blank. Okay. What you can't do on your answer sheet, though, is do this. Don't start circling things as ones to come back to, because the computer will pick that up as something that shouldn't be there. and it might change your results. Okay. So that's something that I want you to think about. Okay. Another thing that I want to think about is, and I'm going to show you question 18 as an example here, is when you are looking at this, some of the questions are really long. This has got a lot of information on it. Okay. It doesn't mean that it's all necessary. So think about your time. You're giving yourself an average a minute. You have not got 3 or 4 minutes to read all this, try and understand it, okay? So don't worry about reading all of this. I would go straight to your question here. Mrs. Ward wants to join Heritage with her 3 children, 10, 12, and 15. How much should she pay? How much must she pay? Sorry. Okay. So don't worry about trying to read all of this because you haven't got the time to figure out what's going on with it all. Go straight to this bit, look at exactly what it's asking you to do, and then try and work it out because it just takes too long and there's a lot of information there. And some people find it very difficult when they're given lots and lots of information all in one go. Okay, right. For our sort of final bit today, because we've looked at different kinds of questions, how they're worded, how to answer them on the answer sheet, all those sort of things. I want to look at something which is a really important bit, and this is called elimination. Okay, this is my final bit today. So, elimination. This is really only works with this kind of test where you have options and you only have 5 options. The best way to deal with those 5 options is to use elimination almost always. This is how I mean. So let's have a look at 19. Now, these kind of questions often flummox people a bit. And I think it's because you really have to have quite a good understanding of, in this case, capacity. In other cases, it might be how long would a football field be? Or it might be what would the weight of a can of beans be? Okay, it might look at weight, might look at mass, might look at length. I think it's because you have to be able to picture how much something will hold for this one, okay, or how long something would be in real life. So say I'm looking at this one and I go, right, okay, about how much does an ordinary mug hold? Okay, so I'm looking at it, I'm thinking, can I remember? Okay, so I know there's 1,000 milliliters in a liter. Is that necessarily going to help me with this? Possibly, because I might be able to think, right, well, okay, so I think that I have a carton of milk in my fridge. I think that might be maybe a litre, maybe slightly less. What I'm being asked to do is an ordinary mug. So you've got to picture an ordinary mug here. I don't think if I was going to get some, if I can't work out exactly what it is, I would always use elimination with every question, but particularly with ones like this. Let's get rid of the silly answers. There's always going to be a silly answer in there. I think it's highly unlikely that my ordinary milk jug or whatever I'm going to think about is going to hold 300 litres. So therefore my ordinary mug is not going to hold 300 litres. That would be a lot, okay? That's a silly answer I can get rid of. 30 litres also to me sounds a bit much, okay? I don't think 30 litres or even 3 litres, okay? So you've gone through them. So now when you're looking at them, think, well, 30 millilitres, if I know there's 1,000 millilitres in 1 litre, that's quite a lot. 30 millilitres is only going to be a tiny amount. So probably my best answer would be B. Now, what I've done there is eliminate the silly answers or eliminate the ones that I'm pretty sure it can't be in order for me to search for the right one. Okay. Elimination, don't do it on your actual answer sheet, okay? It's got to be done on here, on your question sheet. You can write anything on this, as I said before. Underline what it's asking you to do. Put down, right, okay, no, it's not that, it's not that, it's not that. Once you've eliminated something, it's almost disappeared from your mind. So therefore, it makes it easier for me to think, right, is it 30 millilitres or is it 300 millilitres? I've got rid of 3 others. What it also means is that if I can't decide whether it's 30 or 300, I can have a good educated guess between those two. And if I've got those two right, I've got a 50-50 chance there of getting the right answer. So I've got rid of some of the options to give me a greater amount of chance there of getting it right. The only thing I would say as well with elimination, don't do this. Because if this is one you want to come back to, you're going to make it harder for yourself because you've rubbed out or crossed out some of the answers, okay? You're going to take more time to have to rub them out, etc. Okay? Just maybe cross out the actual letters, okay, that are on there. So let's have a go at the next one with elimination as well. So if I look at question 20 here, which of these is not a quadrilateral? Okay, so I'm not sure that I can remember what a quadrilateral is. So I'm thinking and thinking and thinking. I'm going to have an educated guess before I move on, because that's the way the technique that we're using here. I'm not just going to leave it just because I'm not sure. I'm going to have a think, which is not a quadrilateral. Now, if I can't remember what a quadrilateral is, let's have a look at the shapes. Let's see what's different about them. Well, a quadrilateral can't be something that's not straight sides. They've all got straight sides. Let me see if there's anything else about them. Okay, I'm going to count the lengths of the sides and see if that helps me. I've got 5 here, 4 here, 4 here, 4 here. 1, 2, 3, 4 there. Okay. Now, it's asking me for what is not a quadrilateral, and look, not is in capital letters, which always gives me a clue that something is important. Not a quadrilateral. Now, even if I can't remember what a quadrilateral is, I could have a pretty good guess that this is different to these other ones, okay? So I can get rid of all of these ones, okay? Because I can pretty much have a guess that that is that. And then afterwards, I can put a circle around it, a little asterisk, whatever I'm doing. There's something to come back to. And when I come back to it, I might think, oh, actually, yeah, quad. I'm pretty sure quad stands for 4, like quad bike. So therefore, it's not a quadrilateral. It would make sense that it's A. So I'm happy with my answer of A. Okay. Hopefully, that will then help you to move on, because by eliminating, choosing your best answer, writing it down on your actual answer sheet, putting your line in, will hopefully mean that you can get to the end of the test. A lot of children do not complete the end of the test. Okay, they don't get to those end questions because they just run out of time and they spend ages on one question, and it doesn't help, because you may end up spending 5 minutes on one question, which could have been 5 more questions. So there's a big difference between being able to move on and not being able to move on. Right, I think for the moment, what I would really like you to do is to have a go at the beginning of this test. Obviously, we've been through quite a lot of the questions together, and perhaps get up to question 23. And question 23 is here. That was the baby one, just basically the end of page 10. They should be relatively okay. I would like you to do it without looking anything up. Have a practice at using the answer sheet. So all your answers should be on the answer sheet. You can look at the answers in the parent's guide that's on the folder as well to see if you've got them right. We will continue in our next sessions going through some of those ones you've done, talking about them, and also looking at ones that are further ahead. So our next session is going to be based around questions that involve number. So we're going to look at things like fractions, place value, decimals, percentages, okay, to go through those kind of ones. But for the moment, I think if you have a go at going up to question 23, which, as I say, is to the end of here, which is to the end of the baby and her weight one, up to page 10, then that will be a really good start, and we can have a look at the specific kinds of questions, and I will talk through how to do some of the maths for specific kinds of questions in our next session. Thank you very much, and I will see you soon.